I recently received a friend request that reminded me of this story, so I'm going to share it here. This happened after I went to university, so I was 18. I made an effort to make friends after I moved onto campus, and ended up with a few groups to hang out with, including a new girlfriend and plenty of people from my classes that I liked well enough. There was one class before lunch where it was traditional for people to go to the cafeteria afterwards to eat in pairs or threes. I wasn't very discerning about who I would have lunch with, because I got on fine with most people from the class, and we were all trying to make an effort to be social. So when one girl, Lily, asked if I wanted to eat lunch together after that class, I didn't have any reason not to go. We talked about school and that kind of thing, nothing noteworthy, but she did ask me to get lunch with her again the next week. It became a pattern, and there wasn't exactly a way to start saying no suddenly. It was fine, but it did mean I lost the chance to eat lunch with anyone else on those days. In hindsight, I suppose that was the point. One day in class, I asked someone if I could add them on social media. This happened in front of Lily. I saw her face jerk towards me from a couple of seats over. It was a sharp reaction that it was hard to ignore, and I still remember it. By the time that I got home later that day, Lily had sent me a friend request. No friends in common. I don't know how she knew my last name. I was a bit surprised, but I guess she had just dug through the university's social media pages and found me through there. It gave me a bad feeling, but surely it was fine. She ended up messaging me a lot and commenting on anything that I posted. I told myself that she was just awkward and we became friends, if not close. I had known worse people. She still always got me to go eat lunch with her after our one shared class. But other than that, we rarely spent time together in person. I saw her around sometimes, but I never went out of my way to hang out with her. So it was mostly online messaging and seeing each other in group settings. Coincidentally, my girlfriend was also called Lily. This was something that clearly bothered Lily, not my girlfriend, who couldn't have found it less interesting. It's a common name. She occasionally hinted that she wanted my girlfriend to pick a different name, or joked about it not suiting her. She clearly didn't like my girlfriend at all, and I had an idea of why. It was hard to ignore by this point. Lily was starting to unsubtly hint that she had a crush on me. I tried not to address it because what was I going to say? I had never known what to do when a friend makes a pass at me. I was also not interested in the least. Even ignoring the weird stuff that she pulled, Lily was not my type at all. She tended to dress and act in a way somewhere between a 50s housewife and one of those adults who is still obsessed with Disney princesses, if you can picture that. Things took an uncomfortable turn out the day of our last shared class of the year. Instead of asking me to lunch like she usually did, Lily asked if I wanted to go for a walk with her. Again, I didn't exactly know how to refuse, so I said, all right. Our campus was bordered by a large patch of woodland. Lily led me into the woods and the sounds of our fellow students slowly faded away. She sat down on a log and I joined her. She started talking about how she was going to miss me over the summer. I tried agreeing with her, but I didn't want to be there, especially because she seemed almost on the verge of tears. I tried to think of an excuse about having plans with my girlfriend, but before I could leave, Lily chose to kiss me without warning. It was uncomfortable to say the least. I got out of there and was happy to think that I wouldn't see her for a while. I came back to university after the summer, moving into a house with all my friends. Without going off topic, there were some serious issues in my friend group. A lot of petty arguing and worse. I broke up with my girlfriend around the start of that school year as well. And basically the whole mess made me recontextualize things with Lily because it suddenly didn't seem as bad. That said, I didn't want to be alone with her. We talked mostly online. She was still constantly messaging me after all. One upside of everything was that I started dating a boy, and Lily was not pleased to hear that news. I think she had hoped to sneak in after I broke up with my girlfriend, but as I said before, that was never going to happen. There wasn't a big gap between my breakup and this new relationship, so she must have thought that she had missed her chance to be with me. This is where the story gets bad. At this time, I was fairly active on Tumblr. I would occasionally talk about my life and mostly reblogged photos and stuff. I was on there one day when something odd had happened. One of the blogs that I had followed had received an ask with some phrases that I recognized. It took a second to register that it was taken from my About page. That made me freeze. I read the message properly. Someone was asking this completely random person to analyze a section of text from my page, asking for their opinion on the type of person who would write it. I cannot stress how messed up it was to see people talking about me like I was a character in a book that they were trying to study. The reply was basically, "I don't know, sorry." But the important thing was that the question hadn't been anonymous. It had linked to someone's blog. Obviously, I wanted to know who had taken such a bizarre interest in me. As far as I knew, no one in real life, other than my boyfriend, knew about my page. Well, no prizes for guessing who was behind it. What I found was like a shrine. She was using a fake name, but I recognized Lily all over that thing. It was this cutesy red and pink page. There were a few posts about her interest, but most of the content was focused on her primary interest, me. Most of the posts were about me. There were accounts of things that I had done recently. He told me about such and such, and he went to a nightclub recently, etc., as well as references to things from as far back as I had known her. It was clear that she had been keeping tabs on me, both online and offline, gathering up every scrap of information that she could collect about my life, and was hoarding it here in her collection. This was some straight, deep web stuff. She talked about us eating lunch together and how special our dates had been to her, as if it was anything more than acquaintances getting food after class. She talked about the time she had forcibly kissed me in the woods, but she wrote it as if it had been mutual. She quoted lyrics from my favorite song and talked about how she would always be there for me, no matter who else came into my life. Lots of references to loving me just the way that he is, which answered another mystery about an anonymous love letter I had received earlier that year, with the same wording. It got worse. There were a lot of posts about my boyfriend as well. These weren't so nice. They got vicious, talking about how he didn't deserve me. He didn't know what he had. If she was with me, she would be jealous of anyone else who came near me. So my boyfriend not being a jealous person meant that he didn't love me. It was angry and hateful. I didn't like to think about the sort of person who could write so obsessively, being fixated on me. One thing that didn't make any sense at first was that the blog also made plenty of references to Lily's best friend, Steven. She had never mentioned this person to me. Her post talked a lot about Steven and how great a friend he was, and how much fun they had together, how he looked out for her, and etc. I was trying to work out whether this was an online friend, when one specific post made it all click. She had posted a photo and captioned it with, "Steven sent this to me. He knew that I would like it and I love it," or something like that. The problem was, the photo was taken from my own page. I hadn't sent it to her. She took it from my page and then claimed this fictional best friend of hers had shared it with her, because in her head, she had split me into two people. In her messed up fantasy life, I was both the perfect best friend who was also looking out for her, and her soulmate who was bound to end up with her when I finally got over my sweet and kind boyfriend and all the other easy girls that I hung out with, that she had made dozens of posts complaining about. Who was she complaining to? Oh, and Lily had an audience. She had asked open questions about me and her relationship with me, and got messages back from her followers, people who took what she said at face value. I saw a bunch of people agreeing with this stalker that my boyfriend didn't deserve me, and that we were bound to break up soon so I could be with Lily, the person I was clearly supposed to be with. She had this fake, fanfiction version of my life up for everyone to share their opinion on, and she had made herself out to be the hero of it all. I went maybe a month back into this page's history. I didn't look at everything that was there, it was too much, so I'm not sure how long this had been going on. I sent Lily a message confronting her about the blog. She said nothing. I cannot stress how weird it was to have found pages and pages dedicated to me, with her talking about how she was in love with me and would make sure we ended up together, slamming my boyfriend, and building a fantasy life with two different versions of me in it that she clearly believed to be real, and then acting like it hadn't happened. She said nothing. She didn't address it. She changed the subject, even after I had pushed, and it was like she hadn't even registered what I said. I've never seen anything else like it. She had deleted the page, of course, or at least changed the name, and hid it so I never found it again. It wasn't the end though. I wasn't going to hang out with her anymore, but we were still shoved together in classes and she had started to actually scare me with what she might do next. I'm kind of a paranoid person. Knowing someone was obsessively tracking me for who knows how long, it freaked me out. The next thing she pulled was trying to seduce my boyfriend. It was an absolutely useless attempt that only made him uncomfortable. He told me about it right away. What was her plan there? Did she hope to tell me that he cheated and wait for me to break up with him? Why would I want her after that? When that didn't work out for her, she tried hitting on 3 of my other friends, and none of them took the bait. She ended up dating one of my former housemates for a while, but made sure to send me messages while they were together, letting me know that she would rather be with me. No thanks. Lily made sure to stay in my life the whole time I was at university. There was a time when I had tried to pull away from her, and she had ended up starting rumors about me and damaging a career opportunity I had put a lot of work into. I don't know what else she did behind my back, but it made me realize it was safer to let her think she was a part of my life while ignoring her, rather than doing something that would cause her to get angry. After I graduated, Lily still wanted to spend time together, but I knew that I didn't have to now. I made excuses about work and barely talked to her after that point. I almost entirely stopped posting on social media that I knew she knew about. Of course, she didn't give up that easily. She tried to start conversations, asked me to meet up with her, attempts that I usually ignored. I didn't like to think she was still tracking me online, but she probably was. I don't know how, but she'd occasionally reference things that I mentioned online somewhere that she shouldn't have known about. The last time that we had a real conversation, she sent me a message out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken at all in months, and we hadn't talked about anything serious in much longer than that. Thinking about that conversation still makes my skin crawl, but I'll summarize what happened. At first, she asked me some other questions about how long I had known I was gay. I told her some basic stuff, the kind of thing I would tell anyone who asked. But then she changed the subject. She started talking about how I would feel about her if she was a boy, about wanting to be a boy for me. The messages quickly became weird. She went into plenty of detail about fantasies she had of the two of us. Again, we were not friends at this point. We had never been very close, at least not from my perspective, and we had barely spoken for years. I can't imagine sending messages like that to even a close friend, let alone someone who barely knows you. I tried telling her not to pull this crap with me, but she had decided to change tactics. She sent photos of herself, followed by a bunch of messages, maybe 4 or 5 a minute, way too fast for me to reply before the next one had arrived. Basically quoting back what I had told her about myself and my past earlier. She was telling me these things as if they had happened to her. She was role-playing as me. The worst part was that she seemed to believe it was real, even when she was quoting me word for word. The things that I had told her only hours before were now her life. It was like she was trying to absorb my history to take it over, to make my life part of her. Yeah, I didn't talk to her again after that. I ignored future attempts she made to talk to me, and I eventually silently deleted her from my inactive social media, which was her only real way of contacting me. I really thought that she might finally move on. A few days ago, she sent me a friend request. It's sitting there unanswered because I know that if I delete it, she'll only send another one. Lily and I met nearly 12 years ago. This story is just the highlights, and even then, it's only the stuff that I know about for sure. A lot happened behind my back, I know it did. I grew up with parents who were reasonable, loving people, but who were also more than a little paranoid when it came to the internet. Anything that allowed anonymous communication in any form was banned, point blank, from the household. Even Club Penguin wasn't allowed because you could chat in it. Naturally, when I got my first laptop at 12, it was a piece of crap. I only got it because of homework. The first thing I did was start trying to talk to people online. I wasn't going in chat rooms or anything because my parents' warnings still resonated with me, but I wasn't avoiding contact either. I ended up making a DeviantArt account. I know, cringe, where I didn't do much posting as I lack artistic talent. In spite of this, however, I was contacted via private message by a guy who I'll call Joker, because his profile picture was of the Joker. That should have been a warning sign in and of itself, honestly. Joker just started talking to me out of the blue. I think I had commented on one of his pieces or something, and he had reached out to thank me for my kind words. We started talking, and it turned out that we had a lot of common interests. We played some of these same games, liked some of the same cartoons. He seemed like a really nice guy. I think it was maybe a week or two in that the first uncomfortable thing had happened, even if I didn't exactly think much of it at the time. The two of us shared a somewhat misanthropic view of the world, so there were a lot of dark jokes passed between the two of us. Sometime about a week after we had first started messaging, he casually mentions thinking that the world would be better off without him. I sent him a sad face and assured him that it wouldn't, as I quite liked talking to him. He didn't say anything more about it then, so I assumed that was it. It wasn't. The Joker talked about this a lot. His talking about it quickly morphed from passing commentary to long and graphic rants about how much he hated himself and wanted to die and what method would be the best for him to do so. I spent hours talking him down over chat, terrified that one day I wouldn't be able to do enough and he would actually do it. His messages started to get creepy in a different way. He started telling me how grateful he was to me, how no one had ever cared about him as much as I did, how important I was for him, how he couldn't live without me, how he would just die if he were to ever lose me. He was obsessed. Well, one day a couple of months in, my laptop breaks. It wasn't too bad, but it still took a couple of days before everything was back in working order. I had logged back into DeviantArt to find dozens of messages, all from Joker. They started off normal enough, but quickly became frantic after I didn't respond. The last message he had sent was along the lines of, "I can't take this anymore," followed by a link to a picture image. The image was of him hurting himself. I was horrified, and I quickly messaged him back, terrified that I lost a friend, and he responded, "I thought I'd lost you," he said. "I thought you had left me. I couldn't handle the pain without you. Don't you ever do that to me again." I said that I wouldn't, and he seemed relieved. He only got worse from then on. It reached a point where practically our every conversation consisted of him either professing his obsession with me, threatening hurting himself, or both. The stress was keeping me up at night. I was terrified that one day, soon, I would open a chat to see nothing. I was utterly convinced it was my job to keep this guy alive, and that I was failing miserably at it. The Joker kept escalating until one day, nearly a year in, he finally said something that frightened me so badly I had to leave. The Joker started talking about how I was the last good person left on this miserable planet and stuff like that. He waxed poetic about how much he wanted to do it, and said that he had finally found a way to truly be happy. He said the only way he would ever be able to find happiness was in doing this, and taking me with him. That way we would always be together, free from the cruel weights of the world. He started going into very detailed descriptions of how he would do it. A lot of them involved carving out my heart, and then clutching it to his chest and laying beside me as he took his own life. I was terrified, enough so that I did what I should have done a long time ago, and I deleted that account. For years following that incident, I never spoke to anyone online. Even to this day, actually, there's still a lingering sense of dread when it comes to online interaction.